Welcome back to another episode. Thank you so much for everyone for taking the time to catch up with Kestner. Today I have Adam. Adam, I've had the chance to meet a couple years ago, and even though our interactions were short, I'm super blessed and super thankful that he's taking the time out of his day to share this time with me and catching up on conversation, and just catching up on his life over the past couple years. Adam has quite the background in just so many different walks in life, and he's a good brother in Christ. So I'm really thankful to have him on the podcast today. Adam, for the people that don't know who you are, introduce yourself real quick. Who are you? What are you up to? Let's start off.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, thank you, man, for having me on here. Again, it's just an honor. Sharing stories, like you said, man, it's so important. My name's Adam. I'm 36 years old. Married. I've been married for 12 years.
Yep.
I've got two phenomenal kids, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And that is definitely the chunk of the heart of my life, why I do the things that I do. For the past 8 to 10 years, my wife and I have we had a ministry / business hybrid called the Legacy Project. It was based in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Through that process, man, God did so many amazing things. It's one of those things that where you can't even really explain what it was and how important of a moment it was for all of us involved in life in that point of our lives. It was truly a God thing. And just the community that was built, the relationships. So it was just, it's hard to explain exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Of course, on the tangible, it was a dance studio. We had a professional dance company.
Yep.
And from that spurred a lot of different creative avenues for myself. Got into marketing pretty heavily. Got into videography pretty heavily.
Yes.
That's pretty much where I've been. Recently, my wife and I moved to Redding, California to be a part of the Bethel Culture and just really grow with God and see what God has next for us.
Just quick background on the history or the origin story of me and Adam. Went over to training to Tulsa, Oklahoma for our teaching program, and just through that walk of training as a teacher, we stumbled upon Legacy Dance Project and Legacy Dance Studio, and it was one of the few dance studios in the area, and let alone it was a Christian dance studio, or at least supported the message of Christianity. And immediately I had to go, right? We had to go and experience what this was like, and just taking a class and going through the different things that we'll talk about today. Just super blessed. That's how we met. So it's a thorn in a haystack, as I'd like to see it. It was completely random, but I mean, it was looking at it from the lens of God. It was definitely meant to be. So just a little bit of background for the people watching. Adam, so in addition to describing kind of your journey in creating your dance studio, talk about the mindset of what it was like when you first opened those doors, and then when did you define Legacy as a successful studio in your eyes? So it's a kind of a double question.
Yeah. The mindset going in, and then when we decided or figured it was quote unquote successful. So the mindset going in, I've been a Christian now for like maybe 15 or so odd years. I didn't grow up in a Christian environment. I was raised Catholic, but my parents they're both grown and both have really got their lives together. But when I was as a child, they went through a crazy divorce, and there's a whole story behind that. All that to say is that when I came to Christianity, my perspective was a bit different than a lot of people. I didn't actually get saved in a church. I actually I was at a point in my life where I was borderline homeless, and there's a story behind that, but that just takes time, so we won't go there. But basically, I had a mental breakdown in my job, and I went to this bathroom of this dirty warehouse that I was working at, and just cried out for God, and He responded in a very, very real way. And I was like, God, I give up. I'm done doing it my way. And then from that point, it wasn't like my life all of a sudden got better and everything. Like, no, But what did happen though was I got up with a sense of hope and it's a sense of knowing that I could have victory.
Wow.
And so that was my piece of it. Very similarly with my wife's testimony, kind of some of the things that she went through.
Yeah.
All that to say is that we saw a definite need for the world to grab a hold of what we had, and we didn't even really know like how to explain what it was at that point.
Yeah.
We knew that God was saying, like, be passionate about your faith, but don't make it a Christian quote unquote thing, right? Like we wanted it to be so excellent at what we did that we would draw people from all lifestyles and all belief systems to be a part of it. And so we were youth pastors at the time, kind of fast forwarding a little bit. Her and I were youth pastors at the time and felt very strongly towards this dance thing. And it didn't feel right, like to do one or the other. And then I don't know if it was like a particular moment that had happened, but both of us had the idea of why not combine the two? Why can't we do a dance studio or a place that kids can come, teenagers, young adults can come, and they can experience God in a real way? And so I think that was kind of the genesis of the idea.
Right.
And then from there, it was just grinding to learn about business because I had very little business sense,
Of course.
Grinding to learn I learned like basic HTML so I can put a website up.
Yeah.
It took me like 6 months to figure out like basic stuff, man. It was crazy. But got the website up, got the business going, and a lot of just trusting in God. We had like zero, like idea of what we were doing. And I don't remember the exact year that we opened up. Well, it was 8 years, so 2011 ish. I think it was 2011. Yeah. Well, but then it was last year. It would have been our 9th year this year, but we shut down last year. So, but in any case, we opened up and it was one of the biggest recessions that America had at the time. And everyone was like, you guys shouldn't open business. And we're like, no, we're doing this. And we opened up by the grace of God, completely debt free.
Wow.
So yeah, it was just a total God thing. And we opened up like with actual students and, it's just in Tulsa, which is a very saturated market.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy to do that. So the idea behind it really was, at the core, was to be so excellent that we would draw people in.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll say it this way because I was almost asked almost a similar question. We were on a Bethel panel not too long ago.
Okay.
And I did a horrible job answering this question. And so I got with God afterwards and I was like, what should I have said? And then he said this to me. Because they asked like kind of a similar question, but to do something that's an impactful thing and to bring it in a non-Christian sense, to be so excellent that you're undeniable, but to be so loving that it's unconditional.
Wow.
And so those are the two things that we really operated under, is that we wanted to be not necessarily the best, which obviously excellence at that point, you'll start getting to that level. But to be so excellent that would draw people in, but then once they came, that they would experience a level of unconditional love.
Wow.
Before any like truth or any like, I won't say truth, but before any like, hey, this is right, this is wrong. Like, And the way that God said it to me is like this. He said, why would people obey a father that they don't even know loves them yet?
That's good.
You know what I mean? And so I feel like a lot of times in the world, in Christianity in the world, they don't fully have that understanding just yet. But any case, so back to your question. So that was kind of our mindset going into it. A lot of faith, a lot of like standing in faith, like not knowing, you know what I mean? Like if it was really going to happen or not.
Yeah.
When we considered it successful, I don't think our idea of success was different. Because it wasn't like a financial goal. It was, our idea of success is, are we actually making an impact?
Yes.
And I think for me, when we started seeing, I don't remember what year it was, and I'm looking back, and when I finally was like, we're actually doing something.
Yeah.
We were at one point we were a competition studio. We were going to like your average typical like studio competitions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and we were doing really well. We were placing high and whatnot. But we
Yeah.
had one season where we decided to have every piece that we brought to competition actually be a Bible, scripture, like a Bible, like actual, like it was like Luke,
Wow.
one whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
that was the actual title, like in the program of the competition. And so with that came a story. So every piece that we had on stage had a story that told of what the scripture actually was.
Wow.
And the way that people responded to that, like I don't even remember what we placed or if we won or whatever,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
was the fact that people came up to us and were like, "Oh my gosh, that changed my life," or whatever. And I
Wow.
was like, "This is it." Um, and then from there, that led us to some other things. We started doing productions, like full on stage productions.
Right. Right.
That was basically that told the story, and that was another piece of it is seeing how people responded.
Yeah.
Um, but that was kind of our gauge for success, and for
Mm.
me at least, when I was like, okay, we're being successful at what we're doing.
Two things I love from that is, and two things I actually like really resonate with. I guess the first one was when you talked about your mindset going into creating the studio. You wanted to create a
Mhm.
space for all people alike, whether you're Christian or non-Christian, just a space where you can appreciate whether that was the love for dance, right, or just for the love
Yep.
of the arts. And that's essentially where I'm coming when I think about when I created this podcast too, right? It's not
Hmm.
necessarily a Christian podcast, but I mean through the ideas and through the stories of other people, walks in Christianity or not, there's so much of an appreciation that we can have for each other. And so
Yeah.
just giving a platform, right, whether that's a podcast, whether that's a dance studio, giving a place where people can express their stories, express their lives in a way through movement or in a way through words. It's really powerful and something that we
Hmm.
always need, or maybe even need more, especially during a time just like
Yeah.
this. So I definitely resonate with that idea, and I appreciate kind of the heart that you went into it when creating legacy. And obviously, it's created a legacy. You know, whether you hear
Yeah.
that a lot and the pun to it, but seriously, it's just to see the growth from hearing of how it started and the mindset that you and your wife had when you began. Right, it's something that you really leaned into faith with God with, and you had
Hmm.
so much in the air of uncertainty and insecurities, I'm sure, but the fact that it lasted for nearly 9 to 10 years is it's a blessing in itself. So
Yep.
definitely trusting God was a huge part of that. Resonate with that. And the second thing that I really liked was when you started to focus on the idea of how do I gauge success, right? How do I determine this idea of what it means to bring a studio, a business into something and not focus so much on the monetary aspect and what it means to be financially successful, but what's deeper than that? And I love that you said it was the way that you impacted people. And I resonate with that
Yeah.
because in college I was part of a Christian dance group, Agape, and we all know that Agape means unconditional love. And so the way that we would put our performances together and our competitions was, well, what is God speaking to us, right? What message do we want to
Yeah.
give to other people? And I was very blessed to be a part of that. And that's how I met my girlfriend at the time. And so with that, there's so many different walks of focusing on. It's not so much the competition. It's not so much of the placing, right? It's what message can we send, and also be excellent at the same time too, right? Because we always want to put the
Yeah.
best foot forward for God. So how do we put in excellence, but also focusing on we just want to touch lives. And so having that heart for
Yeah.
you, right, in that competition, I definitely understand what it's like for people to come up at the end of a competition or at the end of performance and say, that really, that 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 was something else, or like that was something different that I've
Yeah.
never experienced, or something in that movement was much more than just dancing. Obviously, that was Jesus, the Holy Spirit, working within them.
Right.
But to give that to someone else during a dance competition, something that can seem so secular, in different industries, it's beautiful that you were able to create a space and legacy that appreciated both, right? Christian or non-Christian.
Yeah.
It was dance for dance, but it was in a way that appreciated God. So I definitely resonate with those two. I love it.
Yeah. I think this is kind of maybe off topic, but
No,
I
no.
think now that being in the Bethel bubble, right?
Right.
Because I mean we're around Christians all the time now.
Yeah.
Looking back in the perspective we had, I would definitely say, if you're a Christian watching this or whatever, and you want to do something significant in the world, like have genuine relationships,
Right.
genuine, not like meaning there's no agenda,
Yeah. Yeah.
other than just to love them, but with
Mm.
people that believe absolutely different than you, because it gives
Good.
you a completely different perspective of how to handle situations. Because I mean, sin is sin, and
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
always honest about that.
Right.
Um, but we never let that change the way that we would handle a person or
Right.
value them. And the perspective that I got, that God gave me through that process, was understanding that we are all God's children.
Of course.
Some of us just don't realize it yet.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
You know what I mean? And so for me, there is no separation between Christian and non-Christian.
Right.
Like, we're
Right.
all God's children, and some of us
Of
just
course.
don't realize that Jesus is Lord just yet.
Right. Right.
Um, and so, I feel like as a ministry, we should, like, there's discipleship, and there's like that's specific Christian, but the majority of what we do should be so much more like, how can we interact and have genuine relationships with people that are not believing what we believe,
Of
and
course.
not for the sake of like changing them, but
Yeah.
for the sake
Yeah.
of just showing them like God is real and that
Yep.
God loves them.
Definitely.
And to me, the thing that really hit me was reading scripture and watching the way Jesus did things. Like, he didn't say go and sin no more. He
Right.
first actually healed them. He first actually gave them something that they needed. Then
Yeah.
he would say go and sin no more. So
Yeah.
he dealt with humanity. Like, he dealt with humanity and the need that they had, and then
Right.
like gave them the command to go and sin no more.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, so perspective that I gained from that.
Yeah. I mean, no, that's good. That's relating it back to scripture, right? He met humanity where they were at. And then from there continued to refine them, as a good friend said,
Yep.
forge in the fire, right? And just learning to rebuild their hearts. So I love how you emphasize that, right? I mean, the term non-Christian can be used so loosely in different ways, but I love how you said that, we're all children of God, brother and sister. And so, whether you believe it or don't come to understand it yet, it's there. So I
Yep.
definitely believe that. So thinking back to your story, right? We were talking about legacy, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
your journey along with that. These past couple years for you have been a huge transition period for you,
Yeah.
just moving from one step to the other. So describe that bittersweet feeling of leaving kind of this legacy dance studio while opening up yourself to being part of this Bethel
Yeah.
culture in Reading.
Oh man. Wow. So trying to unpack that in a very short time frame.
No,
So we we knew, my wife and I knew, we felt that there was transition coming. Um, I don't think we knew exactly what that meant, other than we felt that in our hearts and our spirit, and started to really kind of like in the tangible, in the physical, seeing what was going on. And at our studio, we were still like like people still wanted us to be there, but we weren't as necessary anymore. Meaning that
mm,
we got to a point where we were leading and coaching people in the dance sense that were much more talented than we were.
wow.
Um, and so, but the interesting thing though is that God really through us built such a strong community
Right.
that people, I mean, they would have followed us to the ends of the earth. And in fact, there was, I think, 5 other people that moved out here with us to Reading, from that group.
Oh, wow.
So it was
Okay.
that tight knit of a group. But we also knew that with us being in place there, certain things that needed to start
Mhm.
probably wouldn't have started, or it would have had a much harder time doing so. Like, we needed to take ourselves out of the equation
I
for other
see.
people to step in and run to the next level.
Wow.
Um, and so that was kind of the first thought, was like, okay. And then, if that's the case, the question was, what's next for us?
Yeah.
And what we heard God say was, um, that there's more of an influence for us to have.
Yeah.
But in order for us to carry the more, we have to become more.
Mm.
And so we started seeking and asking God like what that meant. And of course, we love Bethel Culture,
Right.
remotely for many years. So we came to visit 2 Januaries ago, and just to see, if this was real, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the
Yeah.
culture
Yeah.
is really, really like what it is. And
Yeah.
man, what we met was the people were so authentic,
Yep.
so much more real than what I could even imagine. Um,
Sure.
and my gosh, man, before COVID, there was there is, if anyone, once COVID's done, right, and if anyone
Yeah.
comes to visit Bethel or Reading, to go
Yeah.
to the Twin View service, go to the Twin View service on a Sunday night.
Okay. So
That will blow your mind. Like I'm
right
talking,
there, right there.
but anyways, rewinding.
Yeah. No, no,
um,
that was good.
so visited January just to see, to fill it out. And I mean, Reading's a really small town, so
Yeah.
job opportunities aren't the best, and
Mm,
so I'm like, I don't know if this is, a good decision, whatever. And so I'm
right.
praying, and we're like last day we're here, and we knew that we needed to make a decision. So I
Uh-huh.
go for a walk and talk with God, and finally get the yes. And so,
Wow.
of course, that's really tough because that means we're letting go of what we've done, like our
Yeah.
baby in a sense for
Of
8
course.
years. Um, and so, there's things that we set up to make that happen, and then finally gave our team kind of the the news. And some
Yeah.
took it well, some didn't.
Wow.
It was hard. It was really
Sure.
hard.
I'm sure.
Especially the ones that were not really believers.
Mm.
They really didn't get it. They at
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
they really didn't get, like, this is what needs to happen. Um, but so yeah, that was a process. And then moving here, it was crazy because a lot of our income was based also on us teaching master classes and workshops around the
Right.
Midwest.
Of
Well,
course.
we can't drive there anymore. Like, it's,
Yeah.
we're 24 hours, 29 hours away from the Midwest now.
Right. Right.
And so we essentially cut off like everything
Yeah.
to be here. And so, I mean, then I landed a job that was just a total God thing. Like, I
Mm.
worked for a restoration company, which obviously now with COVID,
Yeah.
um, things have been shut down, up and down. But because we're a restoration company, we are considered an essential business. We actually
Okay.
do
Sure.
some of the cleaning and disinfecting for COVID.
Right.
Well, I
Right.
got the job as a marketing piece for that, so I do all the marketing, social media, whatever.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, to land that job, within the first couple of weeks of being here was just insane, total God thing.
Blessing. Yeah.
Um, but then what I encountered, and just being really raw, what I encountered was this sense of where my identity lied.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I didn't realize how much my identity was wrapped up in me being an influencer, me being someone that impacted somebody else's
There you
life.
go. Yeah.
And as noble as that sounds, that still isn't the right thing to place it in. And so
Mm.
we come here, no one knows who we are. We have no
Yep.
like name for ourselves or whatever.
Right.
And dude, I get hit with this wall of like doubt and like self, like
Dang.
devaluation and like
Yep.
just craziness, man. To be completely honest with you, I didn't really get to like the overcoming completely of that. It was kind of like an up and down, right?
Right. Roller
But I
coaster.
feel like, yeah, because I was like, I'm doing good, and then like I'd be hit with something where like something
Mm.
would happen, in the
Right.
Midwest or whatever, and I'm like, oh, like, and I'm not feeling like I'm valued and
Wow.
whatever, and it's just
Yeah.
craziness. But I finally got to a point, and it was real, honestly, like maybe like 2-3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
that I was like, I finally came to the conclusion that I need nothing in the world to decide my worth, other than the fact
Wow.
that I know God sees me as a completely valuable.
Right.
Um,
Wow.
and so like that, like I know it's easy to say that,
Of course.
but the actual like heart
Yeah.
understanding and acceptance of that, that took me about a year of being away from everything
Mm.
to really grab a hold of that. And so that's kind of been my process being here, is just unpacking a lot of that, and
Mm.
really connecting with God in a way that's completely unhindered. So you talk about refining, and this season refining people,
Yeah.
that's absolutely what it did to me. Like, just crazy.
When I think back to my experiences, right, at Legacy, um,
Hmm.
yeah, just I mean, starting off, me and my girlfriend were so blessed to just have the opportunity to be there, right, and just
Thank
to
you.
go into a workshop and take class, that was already an experience in itself. And then for the people that don't know, I mean, Adam blessed us with an opportunity to teach a workshop there, right off the bat. I mean, we just took one class. He came up to us and we were talking, and he just offered it, you know, giving us an opportunity to share that space and seeing the heart that we had, the value that we had, in our mission as dancers and as teachers. He just, yeah, just so thankful, you know, like processing that now. I've carried that honestly through these past couple of years of just that
That's
one
awesome.
moment. And so when I think about legacy, I think of this really, like I said earlier, a needle in the haystack opportunity, a blessing out of nowhere, that was given from God. And so when you talk about the impact that you've had of your child, your baby in this legacy dance team in the studio, it's crazy to think that to move from all of that and something that you've worked on and dedicated your entire life to
Hmm.
not necessarily just put it behind, but to essentially move forward from it in the steps that you felt that God was pushing you toward, and that was to Bethel, that was to Reading, and kind of that 24-hour span, right, driving of just that distance. I'm sure that was such a decision that you had to lean in with, not just with
Oh
your
yeah.
wife, not just with your family and your friends, but you know, having that conversation with God at the center of, am I prepared for this? Am I ready for this? Are we ready for this? Right? Because it's
Yeah.
not just a walk with just Adam, it's a walk with your wife, Shayna,
Yeah.
and God and your children. And are we ready to take this step with so much uncertainty ahead? Right? You said finding a new job or just finding a new community,
Hmm.
and having that resilience behind it, but also that resilience and resistance of people that wanted to keep you in Tulsa, or people that grown so close to your studio and felt that, you know, a part of that identity of legacy was being left behind, and
Yeah.
that's basically you and your wife, right? And so to just know so confidently, or even just to take the opportunity to take that risk so confidently, speaks a lot of just the magnitude, that God can speak into our hearts with such
Yeah.
big pivotal moments in our life. And I'm sure that was a big pivotal moment in your life, that, you know, leaving something 8 years in the making, right? Even if it felt like it was time, it was still 8 years in the making. And I'm sure that it could have affected more lives, just like myself, and
Yeah.
Rihanna. And just to see that, you know, that was where your heart was at, that's what you needed to do at the time, and I'm sure that you don't look back from it. Obviously there's some things that you wish you could have done, wish that you could have grown more into, but at the same time too, God positions us in a way to keep making us into the image that he has for us, and that
Yeah.
requires us to take different steps and different opportunities and not just stay comforted in what we have, no matter how good it is, right? That idea of being comfortable, is something that we always have to wrestle with, because it's in the uncomfortness, it's in the steps
Hmm.
that we have, that's trial by fire, that's making us into better people. And so
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
it's loving to hear that. Yeah.
I think it's important for especially highly skilled Christian artists to
Yeah.
always remember that the gift wasn't ours in the first place.
There you go.
So we have to always be willing to give it back, um,
Yeah.
or hand it off,
Yeah.
whenever God is asking.
Mhm.
Um, and I think through this process, man, you talk about you talk about that drive, dude. Whew, that was a rough one. I mean, physically there was a lot of stuff that doesn't
Or
really pertain to much. Like our truck was breaking down like 90% of the
wow.
time, but
Yeah.
um, but aside from that, it was just that like it was like the further we got away from Oklahoma, the more like I felt my heart just tearing.
My
Um, the,
gosh.
the tears, like the tears in the car. I remember driving through the middle of the desert and just being like, like what am I doing?
My gosh.
Um,
Wow.
but I think in this season, one of the things that God really illuminated to me was the importance of dreams.
Yeah.
And a lot of times for me, like when he illuminates a topic or a thing, he'll start giving me like piece by piece, a lot of insight and knowledge into
Right.
it.
Of course.
um, and I feel like what happens is we misunderstand the dream for the function of the dream. And
Wow.
so like for me, the function of the dream that God had given us for the last 8 years, the function of it was legacy. That wasn't the dream. um,
Mm.
and so many times,
Wow.
especially highly skilled, artists or people in
Right.
that sense, they get caught up in the function, and they let their identity be defined by the function rather
Wow.
than understanding that their purpose is actually, or their identity is connected to their purpose, which is the quote unquote dream.
Wow.
Um, and so, yeah, I think that was a big piece of it for me. The importance of dreams. What God spoke to me, he said that dreams are actually a viewport into the reality that he originally intended here on earth.
There you go.
And he's given us those for like us to bring kingdom here. Like he wants
Yes.
his reality, his kingdom here.
Yeah.
And that's what dreams are. And
Okay.
so they've become a really valuable piece for me, for everyone. Like, how can I
Yeah.
help every single person around me actually get their dream?
Yeah.
But then again, in that process is understanding that, like, separating like the function versus what the purpose actually is.
Like
So
that.
that has been kind of the process for me, what I've gained through like essentially dying to myself,
Wow.
and laying, I don't want to say dormant, but laid and just waiting for God,
Yep.
um, through this last year.
Wow. So many good things there. So touching upon it, you mentioned it earlier, and I love this because I mean, this just shows how much God is working in this conversation. Is you talked about how coming into this Bethel culture, Bethel Church, right? We, as Christians, for those that are Christian watching this, we all know that the impact that that church or that culture has on the Christian community and all across the world, right? Not just in
Yep.
the U.S., but just all across the world. So going back to you, Adam, we know how big of an impact Bethel has. How did you feel stepping into such an environment, such a grand culture, and how hopeful were you in being able to kind of recreate the sense of community in Tulsa, and then
Yeah.
bring that to Reading?
Well, I think, so we have had, in this last year we've had quite a bit of opportunity with Bethel.
Yeah,
We've partnered with them on a few things, and
yeah,
there's some things coming up,
of course.
but that was never our intention.
Mm,
Um, we didn't come here like seeking to be a part of Bethel or work for them, or
mm,
collaborate with them or whatever. We came here literally so we could get more of God. Um, and that was it. Like, that was all. That was the only purpose of being here.
wow.
And we didn't necessarily, like, I'm trying to say this the right way. I love Bethel, absolutely love them.
Yeah.
And whether we end up like working for them or
Right.
whatever, we don't need Bethel. Like,
Mm,
we
good. Yeah.
professionally, we've had our own thing. We built our own thing. And
Right. Right.
so, like, we didn't come with that mentality of like, how can we do that here? It was more of, what can we get from this culture?
Yeah.
And then once we get that, we can start building our own thing again.
There you go.
Um, but yeah, so it was, for me, it was about finding culture, specifically finding, for me personally, because I am very much in like the hip hop culture. I grew up
Yeah.
obviously as a b-boy and popper and
Yep.
locker, um, and there's not a lot of that here. So,
Mm,
there's
go.
actually zero. Well, I shouldn't say zero, because it's me and a couple other guys now,
Right.
but there was like zero hip hop scene here.
Wow.
um, and anything that resembled any kind of like urban culture, I tried to just gravitate to it,
Yeah.
and just meet people that I can meet, and just literally just walking up to people and say, hey, I just moved here, and
Yeah.
you seem like you have a cool vibe, let's grab some coffee, whatever.
Uh-huh.
um, and started just connecting with some people, and so that was kind of, I guess, for me, like, going into it, my hope
Yeah.
more than anything was that I could get something of God, that was very real and powerful and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I can absolutely say that that happened, easily within the first couple of weeks, and then
Yeah.
continued on. There's been so many moments, dude, like, so many moments. And I'll say, I mean, for, again, anyone, because it's funny, because I still traveled every now and then back and forth from Tulsa,
Okay.
and just different places to do workshops. But
Right. Right.
I had an Uber, and this guy, was the Uber driver, and I could tell, like, he had, I forget what it was, but I was like, this guy is into the whole Bethel culture, And so, of course, like, Uber drivers are really careful about talking about it, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but we ended up getting, like, he finally realized, like, that actually, I moved there to be a part of that, and so we opened up and started talking. But
Uh,
he was like, man, he's like, what is it like there? Is it really as good as, and if that's anyone again watching, like, the answer is
right.
yes. Like,
Yeah.
um, there was one particular moment, and again, I don't want to take too much time on it, but
No.
where I came back to, it was on it was on a Sunday morning.
Uh-huh.
But this guy named Richard Gordon, who is the one that typically does the Twin View nights that I was talking about,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
was there. And I don't even remember what he was preaching on. It was just the fact that he was there and he carried this presence, and like
Right.
almost immediately, like it was just God moved. And the
Yeah.
whole place was just, I mean, on the floor. And I walked away, and my wife was actually at home. I think she was watching our youngest at the time because she was kind of still young to be in like the kids church stuff. But
Right.
I came back and I was just like broken and bawling, and she thought something was wrong, and I was like, no, this is good. Like I was like, no, this is a good thing. And for like 3 hours afterwards, I was just messed up. Um,
Mm.
and there is some stuff that God revealed to me um, in that instance that I think really defines and still hasn't fully like developed or impacted yet. But essentially, what happened with that, I'll just say this because I've mentioned it, but
Yeah.
um, there was a point where I saw this mission trip video, and it really moved me. And I have
Yeah.
zero heart for doing overseas missions. Like I love it, go for it, but that's just not me.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, like really, God, like all right, like I was like, he said, I'm gonna give you a nation, and I
Wow.
was like, oh, all right, like cool, like I'll follow you wherever you say for me to go.
Oh man.
And then fast forward to that experience where I was talking about. He spoke to me. He said, no, the nation I'm gonna give you is a nation of hip hop.
Wow.
And that was like there's so much like full circle because I started as a b-boy in the hip hop culture, to kind
Yeah.
of transitioning into the studio thing, and then kind of coming
Yeah.
back to it. Like God in that moment brought everything full circle, and it was
Wow.
like this like moment of like, oh my gosh, I see why you did what you did in my life for the past 10 years. So
Wow.
it's those kinds of things. Like yes, it's real.
Yeah.
um, and so my hope was that I would get stuff like that, and
Hmm.
that was exactly what I got.
I love how you mentioned that full circle because when you talk about your b-boying background, your hip hop background, and then what you were doing in Tulsa with the studio and coming to Reading, and you talking about the lack of community, the lack of hip hop culture, and knowing that you've have so much experience, so much knowledge, so much things that you want to bring to the table of just growing that culture that's been a huge part of your identity, right? That hip hop
Yep.
culture, and God placing you in a place where there was nothing of it, right? It speaks a lot to just the purposeful um, points of where God places us in our lives, right? There was a
Yeah.
need for hip hop culture in Reading. Who better than Adam to put him in this place, right? And this is like, I'm not going to speak for God and
Yeah.
his intentions for you, but at the same time too, you just see it that it was very intentional to put your family in this place of you already have a heart for hip hop, right?
Yeah.
There's a need for this culture in Reading, and having that just come into that space where still staying humble, right, and knowing that your place in Reading is a place of what can I offer with just what has
Yep.
God has given me, is a beautiful thing. Now that I think about it, it's just God put you in that place for a reason, and it's awesome to hear that you can attribute that moment of this was full circle for me. This is God's work, because
Yep.
going from that full circle, like you said, over the years of making it very obvious that hip hop is a part of who you are, and it will continue to be a part of who you are for God knows how long. And through that, he's bringing this hip hop culture to Reading, and I just love that. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, and we've, like I said, we've gotten pretty integrated within Bethel now. And we have
Yeah.
on Sunday nights, we have people over to our house. We have artists come over, and we're just building community
Dang.
there,
Yeah.
um, which is really cool. But what I'm hearing God say in this time is that that there is the next revival is going to come through the artists.
There you go.
That there's a revolution that is going to happen through the arts, and I feel like
Yeah.
COVID, like this whole thing, is actually going to be a catalyst for that.
Wow.
Um, and I believe that, and that's again like kind of the some of the capstone in a sense of what we felt like God was saying, like prior to us moving here, was that
Yeah.
Reading and Bethel were going to be kind of a hub or a hotspot for artists to come and be built up and then sent out. And
Wow.
so we're starting to actually see that. Which crazy, dude, is there's so many people now that we've met that have very similar stories to what we have,
Yeah.
where it's like we were doing things on a high level for years and years, 8 to 10 years. God said move, and they're here now.
Wow.
There's a guy in particular, his name's Ben, who was like this b-boy, like phenomenal b-boy that was doing
Yeah.
missions in China for 8 years. Like that was his
Wow.
life, like was a missionary
Wow.
in China. and then God told him to move here, and now he's here. So you talk about the lack of like hip hop culture, then now there's these people that are
Oh
like
my
just
gosh.
coming.
Dang.
Um, and so like it was at one point, it was like a prophetic word for us to say
Yeah.
that, like, there is a revival coming through the arts, and Bethel and Reading's going to be a part of it, but it's not even a prophetic word anymore. Like it's actually happening.
Yeah.
They're like the community that's being built here, the people that God is bringing here. It's insane.
So good. So good. Man, Adam, all right, to think about all the walks of life and the journey that you've gone for your lifetime. I'm going to put you in a situation. So you're at a dinner table.
Okay.
Um, you're at a dinner table. It's kind of dark, but the lights start to dim up. There's the lights starting to show, and across the table is 18-year-old Adam. What do you say to him?
Who? 18-year-old Adam. Gosh, I wasn't even saved at that time. Um, the first thing that I would say is that you matter,
Mm,
that your life matters. And you're not crazy to think that perhaps in some crazy way that you are actually special.
mm,
Um, yeah, and I would probably try to find some way to express to him
yeah,
the value and the importance of a dream,
there you go.
and to, like, not just to him, but because dreams are for the people around us. And
Yeah,
um, when we go after those things, that the people's lives around us will be forever changed.
yeah,
And yeah, not to be afraid to take a risk. Yep.
there you go.
I think that would probably be the gist of
Yeah.
what I would say.
So understanding for my younger audience out there, um, this idea of dreams. I love how Adam put it earlier. Um, Sometimes what we hope is a dream is sometimes the function to that dream. It's not necessarily the outcome or the end product, but it's definitely an essential part in accomplishing that dream. So learning to sit in those spaces, right? Let God do the work, to reveal what is a function, what is a dream, what is just a step to the bigger picture. Have that dream, whatever it is, just be open, be honest, and listen to what those steps are, and always take a risk, right? Calculated risk, not just going out on a whim, but taking the
Hmm.
time to reflect, taking the time
Hmm.
to listen to God if that's a part of your life, but just taking moments in your life, right? Maybe that's right now to think about what risk can I take that I'm willing,
Yeah.
or maybe not willing, but I feel like it's right for me at this time. So
Yeah.
Adam, you spilled a lot of knowledge on this podcast. I'm so thankful, just to hear your growth over the years that I met you a couple years ago, to see where you're at now. It's really truly a blessing for me
Thank
to
you.
just have this conversation, and for the people listening to the podcast, I'm sure that you'll get something out of this, just like I've gotten so much out of it. So, like, again, I can't say it enough. I appreciate you, Adam. I appreciate all that you've done for me, and my girlfriend, or just a couple years ago, but just even now, just sharing this intimate space and sharing this exchange with me. It's
Yeah,
truly a
man.
blessing. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Yeah, and if I could say one last thing, and this is something that God recently spoke to me, and I feel like it's, especially in this time,
Mm, of
um, kind of potent to know, and especially again for
course.
the younger audience,
Yeah.
is understanding that faith doesn't remove risk. Faith is the risk in our
There you
life,
go. There you go.
um, and without it, we'll never move forward. So don't be afraid to take that first step. If you've got a dream, know that there's other people's lives that are waiting to be changed on the other side of your yes to your dream.
Love it. Boom. Mic drop. Adam, thank you so much for taking the time.
Man,
I
thank you.
appreciate you. Until the next time.
All right, man. It's good to see you.
Peace.